Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Sleuth Intuition Live. Today is November 26th, 2021, and we have a pretty decent show for you. These lives are more aimed at people who are pretty familiar with the details of the Delphi case. So these are going to be the nuances and the subtleties and just to kind of keep your third eye open when it comes to approaching the case. Today we are going to talk about sexual predator awareness. We're going to talk about the I-70 killer. We're going to go into his first victim, along with some new updates about the I-70 killer. We are also going to talk about teen killers in regards to the Delphi case. We all know there were other teens out there. There was no DNA matches so far, so it's very possible that there is a teenage killer involved. Do we know? No. But we will discuss other cases, try to make a comparison and see if there's anything that we may have overlooked or something that our mind is just too afraid, to attempt to comprehend. And then we will finish it out with some cases of family killers, people that you spend your life with, people that you love, turn around and destroy the lives of fellow family members. And then we'll probably just open up the floor and then call it a night. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. This is a video put out by Indiana State Police. It's called Sexual Predator Awareness. It was left in the Delphi Facebook group, Who is BG? Delphi Murders, Who is BG? No Rules. One of the group members left this video and I wanted to show it today. So let's go ahead and jump right in.
That would probably be one of my main pieces of advice looking back on it. If there's red flags, there are red flags. Don't think they're pink or a slight shade of white. He's reddish pink. Okay, if there's something that needs to be asked, it needs to be asked.
It's a Milford area school teacher in hot water tonight, accused of an inappropriate relationship with a former student.
The teacher accused of touching a young student inappropriately.
It's a former Indiana teacher is accused of using a student's prize in a school auction as a way to get closer to him and start an inappropriate relationship.
One 11-year-old girl who attends this school says the band assistant touched her inappropriately several times, and right now police and the school are investigating.
And now 3 former educators face charges. It's happening in Woodward County. KOCO's Morgan Chesky with how investigators tracked them down.
Rick, as you might expect, many people in Seymour were shocked to hear that a teacher they've sat across the table from at parent-teacher conferences could face such serious charges.
New tonight, the Highlands County School District under fire and under investigation for failing to report possible child abuse.
Police say she allegedly sent inappropriate videos of herself to an 18-year-old student.
Delaware County, a school counselor facing criminal charges accused of sexual exploitation of teenage boys. And police tell us Daryl Hughes used his job to target the students.
This criminal complaint tells a minor story about how Hughes made him feel like they were friends, allegedly buying him cigarettes, alcohol, and drugs.
The facts are Mr. Hughes had the underage victims take their clothes off, then took photographs of them, promising it would help launch their modeling careers.
Police say inside Hughes' home, they found hidden cameras. Then they say they found a memory card inside a potted plant. They say when they reviewed the material, it showed a young man getting out of the shower. Neighbors are shocked at the news.
Yeah, he used to be outside cleaning up his yard. I mean, he kept it looking real nice. You never would have thought anything about him like that, ever.
4 other potential victims have also come forward accusing Hughes of similar acts. Stories dating between 2007 and 2013. Prosecutors are asking any other potential victims to please come forward.
Every week, there are new reports of children being victimized by adults, relatives, neighbors, and even educators. The purpose of this training video is to raise awareness for Indiana educators and ultimately eliminate these child predators from being a danger to our students. The Indiana Department of Education, in partnership with the Indiana Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, want all teachers to be aware of mandatory reporting requirements, red flags, behaviors of potential offenders, and to understand how and when to make a report.
One of the challenges we encounter is that many people think I would recognize a sexual predator. I would recognize a child molester.
You're not going to be able to reliably identify a child sex offender simply by looking at them. You have to think about and have the training and experience to understand what behavior you observe.
You could sense the teachers felt, even if they had any type of slight suspicion, well, it couldn't possibly be that because the student likes him so much. The flags, something's going on, or anger, or those types of issues weren't there, so what they were seeing was me, producing results with these students. The atmosphere was that he's doing such good work that we would just, I think most people would just push away any kind of doubt or anxiety that they might have, even if it was just a passing thought. They would make it sure it just kept passing.
People in the school environment typically wouldn't do just one thing. It's going to be a course of conduct that we generally label as grooming.
One of the things we see when someone is grooming or essentially trying to seduce a child is they generally do that through a combination of attention, affection, and gifts. They're going to prey on a child who either in reality or in their own perception are not receiving that attention, affection, and gifts at home.
There were definitely things that I was doing to make them feel more comfortable, by things I was purchasing, things I was offering to them. Most of the kids that unfortunately were victims were of social economic lower class, and so they weren't having even some of their basic needs met, financially. And so even if it was something like clothing items or cigarettes, it was a way of appearing to be cool with them and having a bond with them, that maybe a relationship with them that wasn't like anybody else. Unfortunately, that would lead to them having a higher level of trust with me.
Darrell Hughes used a number of methods to grooming behaviors with the students at his school. He would provide them with gifts. He would use his influence with the probation department to get some of these students out of trouble. Darrell Hughes would also take these students home with him, have them do jobs at his home.
In your particular case, these students came over, they took showers at your house, and part of that was filmed.
Yes.
What was the method to get them comfortable enough to where they would take showers at your house?
Having them do work where they would want to get cleaned up before I took them out to eat, before I took them back home to the city where they lived.
And essentially what they're doing is they're trying to slowly and systematically build the trust with that child and erode the boundaries that child has built up of what is appropriate versus inappropriate behavior. Generally, humans are built with a sixth sense. We can tell when something is wrong, when something's inappropriate, when something's dangerous. Some of the most significant investigations with offenders that were victimizing multiple children in a very egregious way over a long period of time, that initial phone call, how we became aware of it, was someone that said, I almost didn't call you. I almost didn't pay attention to this, but I thought I should. What you need to do as a school administrator is trust that intuition, trust that instinct.
It felt like a lot of stuff had been ignored, and a lot of stuff was ignored. That, I think, contributes to an atmosphere where this can happen.
When your intuition kicks in that something may be going wrong, and when you think about their behavior, you need to start thinking about whether we're going to need to make a report here.
When it comes to your attention that someone you've worked with every day, had lunch with, be gone out to dinner with, maybe mistreating a child, it's a really hard thing to accept, and it's hard to make that report. But the point of making the report is to allow a professional to check it out.
When we conduct these investigations, we are cognizant of the potential social impact of these investigations. The beginning of our investigations leave a very, very small footprint.
We're sensitive to the school environment when we approach one of these cases. We approach those in the vast majority of our investigations in plain clothes without raising any suspicion that the police are involved. That way, if the allegations are unfounded, we can step the investigation back down without leaving a negative impression in anyone's minds.
I know that I passed people all the time that had some type of doubt, and it wasn't just my paranoia. I could sense it. I could feel that there was something that was going on. And so my answer to that was just try to become even better at what I did so they wouldn't possibly want to think that that could be true.
One of the common mistakes we see the schools make is that they'll wait to make their report to law enforcement. They're going to try to do their own internal investigation first. They're going to try and identify the victim. They're going to try to determine what the scope of the criminality is, how many victims there are, how far it went. And that is a mistake, because in doing that, in many cases, what they're doing is they are altering, they're damaging the evidence that we need to make those determinations.
Something that happens a lot is a report comes to a member of the staff and they're concerned, but they're really uncomfortable making a report, so they go have the child talk to someone else. And then that person is uncomfortable, so they have the child talk to 2 or 3 people before it really gets to the phase of making a report. That creates huge issues for the child. Having a child come in, confronting them in front of other children is a problem. Having the child come in and confronting them in front of the alleged offender is a huge problem. Confronting the alleged offender is problematic. If you're not trained to do that investigation and you're talking to a colleague, you're not going to be effective and you're going to tip them off.
I believe it would be difficult for a school administrator to conduct an investigation like this because of the lack of training and expertise. I could probably pick up a math book and struggle through teaching a class and do a passable job of it, but I would never approach the level that a math teacher could in that classroom. In the same way, a school administrator could probably do what they believe is a passable investigation into an alleged offense against a child, but they would never be able to bring the expertise that we bring to the table.
They shouldn't wait until they have absolute metaphysical certain knowledge that there's misbehavior, because if that's the required standard, the offender's going to get away with it. So if you have a serious question about why, for example, a teacher provided cigarettes to a student, you should be making that report.
Indiana law requires any adult over the age of 18 to report abuse of a child if they have a reasonable belief that abuse has occurred. Beyond that, the state also requires that certain individuals, including employees of a school facility, make a report. And that is to be an immediate oral report through the Department of Child Services Child Abuse Hotline or to their local law enforcement agency.
The question is, what is the right thing to do? The right thing to do is to make sure that an allegation is investigated thoroughly and professionally. The best case is the outcome is that the allegation isn't true. That's great, everyone moves on. The worst case is there's no successful investigation. The teacher's allowed to resign, they move on to the next school and they do it all over again and again and again. Because everyone's more concerned about will there be publicity, will we look bad, than they are making sure that they've protected the kids in their school and in the next school. Legally, if you don't report something that you're required to report, you're committing a crime.
What we would like to see happen whenever someone has any questions on if something's a reportable offense or not is just to go ahead and contact us. If something seems like it's out of the ordinary and they think there may be an offense against a child occurring, leave it to us to evaluate whether something has happened or not.
The best piece of advice I have for school officials who are involved in cases like this is to contact law enforcement as soon as possible. If you see something, say something, allow us to evaluate the case and continue the investigation from there.
Okay. So now that was some great information. The part where they said, do not investigate on your own, things like that, I just kind of blocked that part out, like act like I didn't see it. And they're not talking to me. They're talking to you guys. But yeah, I think that's helpful. You gotta, one of the important thing that I noticed these investigators state is that you're not going to notice or you're not going to recognize a sex offender, especially somebody that's never been caught. He said you have to know what to look out for. So I was just curious. I wonder if the girls potentially were groomed to the point where they kept the secret and, you know, they were kind of trained to kind of keep it to themselves. So, what we are going to jump into next is a little bit of the I-70 killer. Now, if you're familiar with this case, you know the details. What the approach I want to take with this is I want to present it in a way that it was presented when it happened. So, you know, take yourself back to when the first victim was identified. They had no information. They had no clues. They had no direction. They thought it was a robbery. Come to find out, this guy would go and kill multiple people, you know, over the next month, and turn out to be one of the most unidentified horrible serial killers in that area. You know, he kind of got one over on law enforcement. So we're going to dive into that. I found a very early article. It was an actual newspaper clipping. And I wanted to share that first to kind of give you an idea how people would have received the news. You know, they would have been looking at their newspaper or they're watching their, you know, their local news, 6 o'clock news or something along those lines. So I want to create that atmosphere. So let's pull up the article. Okay. And I'm going to play a video after this. It's going to give you all the details about Robin Faldera. She was the I-70 killer's first victim. She was working in a Payless shoe store, and he simply walked in there and shot her in the head. So I'm not going to provide a lot of information here. I just kind of want to give you the idea of what it felt like to read something like this for the first time. And then later on that day to witness, or later on that week to witness this news report that I found in an archive. Okay, so we're going to kind of go in a little time machine here. Okay, so slain workers can call upon Payless to tighten security. Now, let me enlarge the screen real quick. Robin Faldera confided in her 2 sisters that she was afraid of working alone in the Far East Side shoe store she managed. To make Faldier feel safer, her sister Susan would telephone the store and sit outside her car, usually at night. But it was about 2 p.m. on April 8th when Robin Faldier, working alone in a Payless shoe store, was shot and killed. It was the oddest sensation when it happened. When I think of all the times I would stop to make sure she was okay, Susan Faldier said, I had an enormous fear of something happening to her. She had that intuition. She had always said that she was afraid, but this was her job. She loved her job. Police say a man walked in, took money from the cash register, and shot Faldier, 26, in the back room of the store at 7325 Pendleton Pike. Police say the man went on to kill 5 more people with the same .22 caliber handgun used against Faldier. He remains at large, and his identity remains unknown. The victims all worked in a retail business located near interstate highways in Indiana. Okay. So this would be the beginning of a notorious killer, of the story of a notorious killer. This is the beginning. This is chapter 1. So let's go ahead and pull up this local news report. It's pretty chilling, to be honest. Kind of made me sick to my stomach. So let's just go ahead and play this. So if you notice, they were calling it a robbery. You know, they definitely know much more now. So I just wanted to bring a little perspective on the Delphi case. We're about 5 years deep. And to be honest, from an investigative standpoint, this case is still fresh. For all you true crime people out there who, you know, you like to look into these cases, you know how long it takes to get something like this done, especially these cold cases, you know, where there's family members involved and DNA helps later on down the road, or people are recanting their stories and then they explain why they lied, things like that. But this is the actual update here. So this is what we're dealing with today compared to what they were dealing with back then. So let's take a look.
Murders across 3 states left detectives scrambling for answers.
Now, almost 30 years later, the St. Charles Police Department takes the lead on a new push to crack the case. And tonight, the I-Team's Christine Byers brings us the latest on the hunt for the Interstate 70 serial killer.
In all, about 24 detectives met here today at the Ameristar Casino in St. Charles to share everything they know about the case.
Every police department that had a murder connected to this killer attended. They went over each other's notes just as they did years ago. This time talking about retesting evidence, especially for DNA with new techniques. They came from Raytown, Missouri, Terre Haute, Indiana, Indianapolis, Wichita, Kansas, and right here in St. Charles. They talked about the victims and their latest lead, an age-enhanced sketch of their suspect. Some of the original detectives also attended the meeting, including retired St. Charles Police Captain Pat McCarrick.
We believe that his primary motivation is the murder.
30 years later, he's still just as invested.
This is my life's work. You never give up on a case like this.
On Tuesday, he met the newest face on the case, St. Charles detective Kelly Rhodes.
I'm going to coach her up a little bit. You know, I'm depending on her to solve this case for us.
Detectives have one more day to compare notes.
And from there, it will be in Detective Rhodes' hands for the next year. At the Ameristar Casino for the I-Team, Christine Byers, 5 on your side.
So there's a little background information. You know, like he said, you just don't give up on a case like this. So I think I'm more of a person investigating the whole Delphi situation more than I am a YouTube person. But you have to have a platform, to get things done these days. And also, really, it's going to be the bouncing of information from one person to the other that really, I think, solves this. So it needs to bounce, between us and then go directly to law enforcement. And I think we are doing a good job. I think as a community, we do well at policing our own. I'm of the opinion, family members, you don't want to basically state that they're guilty, but on the same token, you don't want to come out and say that they're innocent. So you don't go accusing people, but you don't go clearing them either. So who are you to clear them? I think of you trying to clear them the same way that most people view me for not clearing them. So it's a two-way road. So you don't go around accusing, of course. That's a given. But you don't go around clearing people, when you don't have the evidence and things to do so. My fear is comforting a killer. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But right now, I want to go into the whole idea of potential teen killers, just to show the potential that is there. So we are going to start with this article. I couldn't find too many videos on it, so it's fairly well known, but I'll read the majority of it for you guys here. I thought it was perfect for today's show. Okay, so this one is titled Teenage Girls Brutally Murder 85-year-old Woman Just for Fun in 1983. This was published by Mara Bobson. She's of the New York Daily News, and it was published August 20th of 2017. So that is not them in the image, but basically these young teens ran away. They met up, became basically best friends in like 15 minutes, and decided they were going to go kill a woman. Anna Brackett, 85, opened her door on June 14th of 1983 and saw two teenage girls. They told her that a strange man was following them, and they asked to come inside to use the phone. What happened next was recorded later. Today, Cindy and I ran away and killed an old lady. Shirley Catherine Wolf, 14, scrawled in a ledger containing her most private thoughts. It was lots of fun, she said. Brackett, a retired seamstress and great-grandmother, had been waiting on a visit from her son Carl. At around 6 p.m., as he was driving towards his mother's Auburn, California condo, Carl took notice of two teenage girls hitchhiking on the road. So basically, on his way home, he comes to find the dead body of his grandmother. So once he does that, police scouring the neighborhood discovered that two teens had knocked on other doors in the community that day. Some residents listened to the girls' tell of woe and made life-saving decisions to keep the door locked. Yeah, don't let anybody into your home. You tell them, hey, just hang out there. I'll call the police. They'll be here in a moment. We'll keep an eye on you. One woman let them in and gave them some water and access to a phone, but the girls left quickly when the woman's husband entered the room. So she potentially was a victim. That could be what was going on there with Delphi. Just keep going and going until the situation is perfect. Because up until the murder, you're just a creepy person, wandering around and looking suspicious. You're not a killer until you say, hey, look, this looks clear to me. Let's go. She may have destroyed some clues, but it was still not. Oh, I'm sorry. She later told police that her visitors were so creepy that she washed the water glasses and wiped the phone receiver in alcohol as soon as they were out of the door. She may have destroyed some clues, but still not hard for police to track down Brackett's killers. Several neighbors have had the girls close up fleeing the scene and offered detailed descriptions. So these two girls didn't even know each other very long. Um, they basically met that day. They both had tragic childhoods and went out and plotted a murder. They were both 14 and 15. So I thought that was interesting. Now we have something out of England. I kind of did an early show for all my people on the other side of the country, and I thought it would be fair to incorporate something they could relate to as well. So let's take a look at this. Fits right in with today's show as well.
In the dock, wiping away the odd tear, two 15-year-old girls about to be jailed for as long as they've been alive. Punishment for slowly murdering a vulnerable woman. Giving the teenagers a minimum of 15 years each, the judge told them they'd carried out a cowardly attack, sustained over a long period of time, carried out with weapons in many different ways. This is the pair on CCTV just after they'd killed, laughing and sniggering as they call police for a lift home.
There's no need to be swearing, ringing up and swearing and going on like that. What's wrong with me?
Listed as vulnerable, they were used to officers coming to fetch them.
Right, you're in Stephen Street. We'll get somebody along there as soon as we can, all right?
Their victim, Angela Wrightson, was a 39-year-old alcoholic. It was a torturous attack on a helpless woman, using anything in her house they could lay their hands on. This man's daughters used to occasionally hang around with the killers. How does he feel now?
Scared, but it sort of makes me wonder what could have happened, God forbid, if she'd been with them that night. I like to think that she would have run a mile and made the quickest phone call, but it's something, you know, when your own kids are sort of near to it, you sort of start to worry about it.
She's like a happy-go-lucky girl at the time.
Another neighbour, who didn't want his face shown, knew one of the killers. He used his dog to clear freeloading youngsters out of Ms. Wrightson's house at times. He believes today's sentences aren't long enough.
I've been in jail myself. I know what it's like. They're going to find it dead easy. Our jail sentences should be like America. If you commit murder, minimum 50 years before you even get out.
The attack here was horrific. In court, the older girl says she didn't believe such an assault could be fatal. She thought people could only die of cancer or if they were shot. Their life stories, though, are complicated. They were both in care and came from troubled, neglected backgrounds. And when the older girl was asked in court what her date of birth was, she said she didn't know it. That same girl did this drawing before the attack. What does this say about her mindset?
I would suspect they probably didn't know what the outcome of what they were doing would be. My feeling about their behaviour in this is that they've never been given any boundaries about what good behaviour is and what bad behaviour is.
The events in this street are now subject to serious case reviews. The two selfie-taking girls sentenced today describe themselves as true partners in crime. They join a short but notorious list of children who kill. Danny Savage, BBC News, Hartlepool.
Wow. Just completely savage. So just remember, when you're considering somebody who may be responsible for killing Abby and Libby, with the amount of evidence that we have, I mean, we really don't know who is responsible. So that leaves everything on the table. That's why I like to kind of cover every possible angle, just in case it sparks something in somebody. Yeah, I hate when they try to give them a way out and say, oh, you know, they were traumatized, or, you know, yeah, it's bad what happened to them. And maybe it's all part of the same crime. But everybody knows you don't go, if you're a victim, especially, you know what it feels like to have pain inside Why would you go around sharing it? Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this is going to be the last one we have for child killers. This one is a little different. Um, so I'll let you guys be the judge and talk about it briefly when it's done.
Catherine Jones was only 13 and her brother Curtis 12 when they shot and killed Nicole Spites in 1999. The plan was to kill Spites as well as 2 family members. The reason? The youngsters were being sexually abused by one of those family members. Child welfare workers found evidence of abuse at least twice, and yet the abuser was allowed to remain in the same home with them. The brother and sister, the youngest at the time to be charged as adults with murder in the country, pled out and were sentenced to 18 years in prison. They had to grow up behind bars.
At one point I was just so happy to be away, you know, and I know that sounds really, really messed up, but there was just some point where I was just away from all that and I was by myself and I was safe. And I wish it could have happened without hurting somebody else. And I think that's my biggest regret. When they said that they would take us out of the house, I denied it. I said, no, never mind. You know, I don't want to push through with this, even though, you know, in the report, you know, they said there were indicators of abuse. And my brother told me he believed me. And he said, I know it's true because it's happened to me too.
It all led up to the events on January 6, 1999, a night that became all too real for the siblings when they shot and killed their father's girlfriend, 29-year-old Nicole Spates.
He was in the kitchen and I was sitting at the table. I already knew it was fixing to happen. We had already talked about it, and she was sitting at the other dining room table. And he shot her in the chest. And she tried to grab the phone and I went and took the phone. And I took it to the back room and I came back. And I can't say how many more times he fired the gun, but I know after maybe the last 2 bullets, I shot out the patio window. I actually took the fingerprints off the gun and wiped it down. And I told my brother that he got hysterical. He had an emotional breakdown because, once again, this is reality now. This isn't some idea that's in our head anymore. This is reality. And he freaked out. He had an emotional breakdown, and, you know, I was trying to calm him down, and we ended up leaving the house.
The two had been in contact until recently, but Curtis's new detention facility does not allow them to correspond because they are co-defendants in the case.
We're best friends. You know, nobody understands what you go through in here but somebody else that's in here. And I think that's the worst thing he can do to me right now.
Police, attorneys, and newspapers reported the children killed Spates because they were jealous of attention their father was giving to her. But documents depict a family mired in violence and unspeakable acts. The agency that would become the Department of Children and Family Services visited the family 3 times over a 5-year period, and despite documenting signs of abuse, nothing was done.
Sometimes, however, even horror stories have somewhat happy endings. And Catherine Jones, who is due to be released from prison in July, may actually live happily ever after. She found her Prince Charming, or rather, he found her, while reading my story from 2009 while aboard the aircraft carrier, the USS Enterprise. The two fell in love and married 2 years ago.
Wow. So that just shows you don't have to be some type of sophisticated serial killer, you know, to slash a knife or to pull a trigger. So if you get something in your head and you're able to plan it out, it's possible. We might be dealing with some young killers here. just because of time, I want to keep on moving forward. Now, these are family members that we're going to be discussing that were actually found guilty. One was a cold case. They actually arrested the neighbor for a kidnapping and um, sexual assault and murder of a young woman named Jessica Deshawn. But he was later released for whatever reasons, and her uncle, his name is Stanley Deshawn, was arrested for the crime. And that's what we're going to watch here.
Behind these walls, behind bars, sit some of the state's most dangerous and notorious criminals. Among those serving time in the Kentucky State Penitentiary in Eddyville, convicted killer Stanley Dishon.
So it's time for me to come forward and tell the truth.
Nearly 20 years after Jessica Dishon disappeared, and more than 3 years after he pleaded guilty to killing her, Stanley Dishon reached out to WDRB News, saying he wanted to tell his side of the story.
Because I am an innocent man. I did not kill Jessica Dawn Dishon.
September 10th, 1999 is a day that still haunts this community. It's the day Jessica Dishon disappeared, the day marked on her grave. But only her killer knows when she actually died. A bus driver found her body 17 days later.
Why do you think he murdered your daughter?
Jealousy.
Did you have a sexual relationship with her?
No, ma'am. Not at all. No, ma'am. Never in my lifetime. Makes me really feel bad that people feel that way by me for not letting me have a chance to prove by DNA and polygraph that I never had no sexual relationship with that child. Never in my life.
Stanley Dishon took a deal and pled guilty to killing Jessica, as well as incest, sodomy, and rape charges in 4 other cases. It was an Alford plea, meaning he maintained his innocence, but acknowledged there was enough evidence for a jury to convict him. He was already in prison for incest and is on the sex offender registry. He was sentenced to 20 years.
When you plead guilty, the judge asks you if it was your own will to do this, and you answered yes. So you pled guilty.
The judge talked and whispered so low I couldn't understand what the man was even saying. On none of this, I couldn't understand what he was even saying because he talked so low and stuff.
So you didn't know what was happening
No,
when you pled guilty?
I didn't understand. I don't understand the law. I don't understand how the law even works.
His attorneys at the time maintained he did not kill Jessica and only pleaded guilty because the other sex abuse charges would have been hard to beat at trial. And his attorneys believe whoever killed her is still out there.
I wanted it to go in front of the jury, but it didn't happen that way. I was always told to keep my mouth shut, not to speak out in court.
Told by who?
My lawyers.
Did you express to your lawyers that you wanted to go to trial?
Yeah, I told them I wanted to go to trial because I was innocent.
I want to know the truth. And I'm going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing until I do find out who done it, who helped him.
Nearly 2 decades after the crime, Mike Dishon holds tight to memories no father should have of his daughter. A box of FBI files and pictures entered as evidence in the case. He would go through them hoping to find answers. Mike still believes his brother had something to do with Jessica's murder, but doesn't think Stanley acted alone and even wants to visit him in prison.
I'd ask him why he did it. I want to know the truth, you know. And it's like this, if he don't tell who helped him, every time he comes up for parole, I'm going to kick against it. You know, he would die in prison if he don't tell who helped him do it.
The place police could last place Jessica alive showed evidence that something was terribly wrong. Her car in the driveway, her purse, keys, and one shoe inside. Police first arrested her neighbor, David Bucky Brooks, for the murder, but he was cleared of the charges and released from jail in 2003 after a judge declared a mistrial. The case remained unsolved until investigators started looking again in 2013. Stanley became the prime suspect.
How often do you think about Jessica and what happened to her?
I don't even think about it really. Only when people throws it up in my face, what happened to Jessica? And when I come forward with the truth, I said, I'm telling you people the truth. I had nothing to do with none of that.
If you find 2 pairs of jersey gloves, you know, and they both got decomposed body smell on them, that means there's 2 people, you know? And there's another person out there somewhere that helped, and I want him caught.
Former lead Bullitt County Detective Lynn Hunt says there was no DNA or evidence found on either glove, and one was burned in a fire pit.
My brother knew from the very beginning that I was at work on the day of her disappearance. And I can prove every bit of what I'm saying by my co-workers and my boss's secretary.
The Hercules Coach Company in Louisville closed several years ago. Hunt says investigators interviewed several employees, but 16 years later, nobody remembered whether Stanley was working that day. And she says his paycheck stub shows he was not working and he had no alibi.
Stanley Dishon was in sex offender treatment. And the 2 men that he confessed to in the penitentiary, those 2 men were in sex offender treatment as well. But we also know that he had confessed to his cellmate approximately 10 years earlier. And we had that individual. So we had a lot of confidence in his statements that he made.
While Dishon was serving time for the sex crimes, jail informant said Dishon confessed to killing his niece because he was jealous she had a boyfriend and was afraid she would reveal that Dishon was sexually abusing her. Prosecutor Michael Ferguson says those informants didn't get any deals, but Dishon called those inmates liars.
Why should people believe you?
Why don't people give me a chance to prove that I'm innocent? Why don't they give me a chance to get these tests done that I said I wanted done?
Investigators confirmed there was no physical evidence linking him to Jessica.
Do you have full faith that the second investigation into Stanley was done correctly?
No.
Why?
I mean, they should have, you know, like I said, they should have went through and give Stanley a DNA test, just like they did to Brookses. They should have took pubic hairs from Stanley to see if they matched the pubic hairs that they found on Jessica, you know, just like they did to Brookses, and they didn't do it.
Hunt says there was already DNA on file from the incest case, but it couldn't be compared to Jessica's body because her body was so decomposed when it was found, even missing a foot and some fingers. Even though Dishon wanted to take a polygraph, Hunt says his attorneys declined.
Whether or not Stanley wants to take a polygraph or not, what good would it do? And who would care anyway? He's a despicable, evil man. And where he is where he belongs.
But it still goes back to the question, why would you plead guilty to something if you said you didn't do it?
Well, like I said, if I didn't plead guilty, they was going to charge me with it anyways.
Hunt says the investigation remains open if anyone comes forward with more information, although she's no longer in police work.
I think that Stanley did it. My mind's not going to change about that, but if there are other people involved, you know, they don't need to be out, you know, on the streets.
I hope the Lord took her to heaven, and I believe she went to heaven.
Stanley will be eligible for parole after serving 16 years in 2031. He has not filed any appeals, which could reopen his case.
If he's alive when he maxes out on his sentence, he will have served 30 consecutive years of his life in the penitentiary. God in his mercy may spare him the fires of hell. That remains to be seen. But he is right where he belongs today.
Valerie Chin, WTOP
Damn.
News.
Yeah, so this is the brother of the victim's father. Okay. Now, while they're over there accusing the neighbor The killer was right there pointing the finger right next to him. So you never want to comfort a killer. You know? I mean, you think of a family's grief and you want to help them and you want to support them. But when you have an unsolved murder with hardly any evidence, you could be comforting a killer. So we're going to dive right into this next one. It speaks for itself. I broke it into 3 parts, just in case anybody wanted to kind of chat about it or chat about anything. It's a little bit long, but I mean, I'll let you be the judge of this one. I mean, it's unthinkable. It's beyond disturbing. So we will start with part 1 here.
Hills of the Ozarks sits Branson, Missouri, the Las Vegas of the Midwest. Drive 45 miles north on old Route 66.
And you guys might be familiar with this one. It's pretty
Springfield,
well known.
a tranquil college town where the buckle of the Bible Belt meets beer joints. Here on Page Street, in a modest 900-square-foot home, Diane Stouty and husband Mark embody that unlikely mix of holy water and firewater. She's the church organist down at Redeemer Lutheran.
Hey, I'm just a female Judas.
He's the lead singer and guitarist of a local blues band, Messing with Destiny. You'll get the irony a little later. Together, the couple, former college sweethearts, are raising 4 kids in that small house. 6 people, 3 small bedrooms, 1 bath. Tight quarters for what looks like a tight family.
Did you get any sense of what their relationship was like?
As far as I knew, Mark's life was great.
Charles Alexander is Mark's close buddy and the drummer in the band.
He was always happy with the kids. He was always happy with his wife. He loved them. He loved his family. And it was just a great family.
Well, things aren't great for everyone. See, Diane isn't just praying in church, she's paying the bills at home. Okay, Mark picks up an occasional shift bartending, but Diane, a nurse, is the breadwinner.
She seemed to be stable, ended up supporting him. He was the house husband, staying at home with the children.
And if Mark was a laid-back Mr. Mom, the actual mom of the house was civil, if a bit standoffish.
Was Diane friendly, warm?
You know, she was friendly to the point that I can tolerate you being in my driveway.
As the years wear on, life just keeps heaping more weight on Diane's slight shoulders, supporting her family in that cramped house and coping with some heavy challenges. 4th grader Brianna has a learning disability. Sean has autism. And oldest daughter Sarah, a college grad, is still at home with no job and a mountain of student debt. But inside that Page Street pressure cooker, Diane's beloved child is blossoming. 22-year-old Rachel, a star student. This is the relationship that would forge the whole family's fate.
She congratulated her every time Rachel had an accomplishment. When you look at it from the outside in, you think, that's a really close mother-daughter relationship, and isn't that great?
Ron Davis with ABC affiliate KSPR TV took us to the Stouty home.
And what was it about Rachel that drew her mom to her so intensely, do you think?
By all indications, Rachel is an exceptional human being. Very smart, very talented, artistic.
On Facebook, Diane raves about her beloved Rachel, her art, her academics. But nary a mention for her husband, Mark, who in April of 2012 is finally having his moment in the spotlight.
We had a good band. We were literally taking off.
He's flying high. Messing with Destiny is booking semi-regular gigs in Branson, joining the Aretha Franklin impersonators who get marquee billing. It's also Mark's birthday weekend. These are pictures from rehearsal that night, where Charles notices that Mark isn't quite himself.
What did you think was going on with him?
He was just so out of whack. And it wasn't like he was drunk or anything. He was just out of whack. He wasn't with us.
Then the next day, more odd behavior.
He just showed up at my door one day, Saturday. And I said, Mark. And he goes, oh, I'm here to celebrate my birthday, Charles. Only one thing struck me so out of place. His skin color.
What did it look like?
Yellow. His skin was actually a yellowish color.
So something was wrong with him.
Something was wrong with him.
He's right. On Easter Sunday, Diane comes back from church and finds her husband dead in bed.
I was devastated. Devastated.
Did you have any inkling that anything was wrong? Did you get any clue that Mark's health might have been bad? I mean...
No.
Yet Diane tells authorities her husband's been sick and refused to see a doctor. There's a curious ring of blood around Mark's mouth, but it's not enough to alarm the medical examiner, who rules the death due to natural causes.
It was a bit of a shock, but I thought, well, he doesn't really exercise, doesn't really cook, so probably not real healthy eating habits.
There was no autopsy, there was no testing. He was cremated. His ashes were scattered at a lake. That was it.
Diane organizes a memorial service at Redeemer Lutheran Church.
What was that like?
Well, it was sad. It was a sad event. The wife wanted us to do a song in his honor. So we played the song.
Mark's favorite song, Darkest Hour. This is their audio recording from that day. As the family copes with Mark's sudden death, there's a small consolation, a $20,000 life insurance payout, enough for Diane to move the family to a new neighborhood and a larger home.
They moved into this house right here.
Oh, big difference.
It definitely is. It's a step up from where they were.
Okay, that's part one. So I wanted to hear from people who have never heard from this case. I want to hear your opinions on what you think may be going on. So those of you who are familiar with this case, because it is somewhat well known. Okay, H-Doc. So let me know what you think may be going on. Just from what you've seen so far. Hey, Jenny. Okay. It's a good theory. You don't got much to go off of, so yeah, I think that's a healthy theory. Give it another minute. We'll see if anybody has any more comments. Like I said, we broke it into 3 parts so that we can continue to discuss what we think may or may not have happened. So, Annie, you agree with Callie? Callie said, I've never heard of it, but I'd say she poisoned him over time, maybe. And that does happen. Rosie for rivets. The wife was involved. I mean, you really want to go around accusing somebody's wife? How dare you? How insensitive are you? Just kidding. Being facetious. Well, there's a jump. It's very possible he was yellow. That's a good theory too. We all know there's multiple children, teenage age. So yeah, very possible. So while I'm loading up part 2, if you have any more comments, let me know. I'll grab them before we start. It's going to reveal more and more as we continue. Jaundice? Yeah, so Callie and John, thanks for stopping by, John. If you're the same John Smith that makes the videos, I really like your stuff, man. But he's taking the medical approach. Checking out the symptoms. All right, good stuff, guys. So let's go ahead and jump right into part 2.
Over the course of 14 months, the quiet, God-fearing Stouty family seems as cursed as an Old Testament transgressor. Member after member inexplicably struck down. Mark Stouty, who fronted a blues band, and 26-year-old son Sean, both suddenly dead. 24-year-old Sarah lying in the ICU. Her kidneys and brain failing. Now police want to know, is this a matter of bad luck or bad intentions? Which is why Diane Stouty, wife, mom, and church organist, is sitting in the interrogation hot seat.
Don't know what I can tell you.
With cameras rolling, Detective McAmis asks about her marriage. And for the first time, glimpses a reservoir of resentment.
We were still married, but it was not what you call a good marriage.
Had there been any infidelities on either side?
He had. He was running around and he would drink and smoke pot and...
So he wasn't a very good guy, is what you're saying?
Yeah. Even
Fire in the bowl.
I still loved him.
In this police interrogation video, Diane reveals cracks in the foundation of the Stouty home.
Was there ever any physical abuse towards you?
No.
Nothing like that?
I mean, I didn't think it was that bad, but my kids would probably say otherwise. I wasn't happy.
Okay.
Now watch as he deploys a classic interrogation technique, shifting from inquisitor to sympathizer.
I'm a believer myself, so I understand where you're coming from on that.
He tells Diane sometimes even the righteous reach a breaking point. So what happened with Sarah?
As far as did I do something to her, I didn't do anything to her. I mean, I guess I could have taken her to the ER sooner, but I didn't know.
A major reveal. Diane may have delayed taking her daughter to the hospital.
That was just kind of where her story started to crumble.
But I'm horrible. I'm a horrible mother.
Then a suggestion that Sean may have been suicidal. But again, she admits she did nothing to help.
He'd been threatening to kill himself, and I didn't want to bother him because I was tired of it. I'm such a crummy person.
Now's your chance to tell us why and to show some remorse and ask for forgiveness.
Then she drops a bomb.
Put it really short and sweet. I knew they were drinking antifreeze.
Drinking antifreeze?
And I was so mad at them, I didn't want to take them in.
You knew, Diane, that they were drinking antifreeze because you were giving it to them.
And I didn't know what else to do. I really didn't.
And there it is. After 2 hours in the box, Diane Stouty quietly confessing to poisoning her own children with antifreeze.
This is a woman who's admitting that she killed her son and tried to kill her own daughter. What are you making of this?
I was just totally astonished, to be honest. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. There were times I didn't know what to say or how to react.
How long had you been giving them the antifreeze?
Maybe a couple of days.
And what were you putting it in?
Coca-Cola.
How much would you put in?
A couple of teaspoons, maybe.
But why antifreeze? She explains that it's easy to get and easy to disguise. The main ingredient, ethylene glycol, a colorless, odorless, sweet-tasting, and deadly chemical.
Killing someone with antifreeze is a classic way to try to mask what you're doing. It takes time, it's relatively flavorless, and there are no immediate signs after death unless you're looking for them.
Now it's all pouring out, a full-blown confession. Diane admitting she poisoned her husband Mark the exact same way, spiking his Gatorade with antifreeze. Apparently, she'd had it with a husband she considered an abusive deadbeat.
By then, I hated his guts. He would throw things at me. He would throw things at the kids. And I guess I just had enough.
Killing her husband's awful enough, but a mother poisoning her own children? This mom's motive is downright chilling.
Both Sean and Sarah would just basically, I don't know, trash the house and never helped support or even contribute.
So I had to kill him.
Sean would be interfering with whatever I would do.
So he was just a constant bother. Wouldn't leave you alone.
Well, he was more than a bother.
With a pest, would that be a good word for it?
It was more than that.
My husband got on my nerves. I couldn't stand him. And my son, was a pest. I mean, did she seem like at her wit's end?
No, she, again, throughout, she stayed flat. Even when she's telling me that information, she seemed unfazed.
Yep, unfazed, even by the ultimate kicker, why she poisoned her daughter.
And then with Sarah, you talked about, she wasn't getting a job, and then she had these student loans, and you were going to end up having to pay for them.
That's pretty much.
And you just had it with her as well.
I'm not a perpetual killer. I'm just stupid. I regret doing it. I really do. I've screwed up everybody. I've screwed up my whole family.
But it's too late. Here come the steel bracelets.
Right now, you're going to be under arrest.
Case closed? Not by a long shot. See, police are about to search the Stouty home and will find a purple diary with some very purple prose.
This was a key piece of evidence.
It will prove that Diane had a partner and eyes on another target in these horror movie homicides.
So, yeah, what a horrible person. Before we get into part 3, so who else is involved? You heard what they said. They found evidence. They found a diary. Who else could potentially be involved in these crimes? Okay, so we're talking about a mother here. All of the husband's friends, thought they had a good life. And if they wouldn't have suspected her, this whole time, everybody would have been shouting, "How dare you? How dare you accuse that mother? She's a grieving widow. She lost a son, and she has another child in the hospital. How dare you?" Come out there comforting a killer. So if you don't know if somebody's a killer, why would you go out and comfort them? Now, it's one thing to accuse somebody. It's another to comfort a potential killer. Okay? That's something that I'm just not ready to be guilty of. I'm not here to advocate for families of victims. Their lives have continued. Their lives have gone on. The Germans, the Patties, the Williams, their lives are going to move forward, and eventually things will become normal for them. But for Abby and Libby, nothing will ever be normal for them. They get to experience nothing. Life no longer continues for those two. Those are the voices that I'm speaking for. I'm not here to go reach out to the family members. I'm not here to make friends with them. I'm not here to ask them their opinions. They are in just as much the dark as us if they're not involved. Why would I why do I need to talk with them? How are they going to help me figure out a clue or something that might help investigators on this case? I have no dealings with them, and nor do I seek them, because potentially you could be comforting a killer. But for those who go out and accuse the family members, that's completely different. So we need to be clear on that. Welcome, Captain. I should have put a link to your new video that I think you just did it today. Man, that was nice to wake up to. You know, one of the first things I do is I wake up and, before, wipe the sleep out of my eyes or whatever, and then I decide to get on social media. I always look at what's going on with the Delphi case. First I Google any updates today, and then I go into YouTube, and then there was the captain dropping. So if we have any mods in the house, if you could find that link for the captain's video, there is a hilarious surprise guest. It was an extremely satisfying video. So if you guys can give me your opinions on what's going on with this case. We know that the mother was sick. We know that she killed her husband. She killed her son. For the worst reasons. He wasn't abusive. They weren't attacking her. She just didn't appreciate them. She didn't like the way that they were. The coroner as well. I mean, he was despicable. Oh, he was lazy. He didn't cook. So I just figured he just died. I mean, if I'm murdered, please triple check. Like, I love my family. I would never suspect them of anything like that. But please, and they all know this. They know what their task needs to be in a tragedy. Get yourself out of the way. Polygraphs, blood, DNA, alibis. People can fake alibis. If I'm going to plan a murder to protect myself from an eternity in prison, I'm going to create an alibi. Everybody says, oh, well, such and such badged in, or such and such was here at this certain time. You don't think that I know for a fact if I was an evil killer, I could create an alibi, whether it has badges punching in or me clocked in at work. That wouldn't be hard for me. So if it's not hard for me, and I'm not very smart at all, I mean, my grammar's bad. I find myself wrong constantly, but I know that I could pull that off for sure, especially if I'm trying to protect myself from going to prison and being humiliated in my family, and I have to sacrifice 2 young children to do that. If I'm a psycho killer, I'm gonna have an alibi. Because without that alibi, you're not protecting yourself from going to prison. You're just creating a longer sentence. Oh, there it is. Thank you so much. Everybody go check that out. That video was amazing. It's just really just a fresh breath of air. He's never happy. I got love for Sean, though. All right. So nobody? Come on, what's next? You heard what law enforcement said. They said that they found a diary and that she may not have been working alone. So all you investigators that are in this room right now, I want to hear from you. Callie, she hit the nail on the head already with the antifreeze. And I learned a lot about that. I didn't know that that was a popular use of poisoners. Apparently it has a sweet taste. So all you sickos out there, this is not an educational course. This is more for potential victims to recognize certain things. I had no clue that it was that popular. And it took out her husband and son fairly quickly. Boyfriend of the mom's. Okay. Oh, God. That would be sick, Callie. The favorite daughter. That's just insane. Her son was helping her. The dead son? It's a free country, Magenta. Yep, very popular. Yep. We all saw Wedding Crashers. The brilliant daughter. See, that's disgusting. Okay, I'm going to load part 3, and this will be the end of the show. We might make some time for a little bit of convo, since we got a great little group here today. I really appreciate you guys stopping by. But yeah, let's jump right into this. Let's see if some of you were right. Let's see who was wrong.
The freight trains roll through Springfield, Missouri. The wheels of justice are turning slowly too. Police are interviewing 22-year-old Rachel Stouty, a star student, gifted musician and artist, her mom's pride and joy.
Mom was there every step of the way, really encouraging and cheerleading Rachel to be great.
But now her dearest mommy, Diane Stouty, is behind bars after confessing to the poisoning deaths of her husband and son and the attempted murder of Rachel's older sister.
Hey, Rachel, can I get you to switch with me?
Okay.
Police just hit Rachel with the news.
Confusion, shock. I mean, that's... Nobody expects to have somebody that they know do that.
In this interrogation tape obtained by 2020, Detective McAmus lays it all out. Demure Diane has delicately engineered a ruthless culling of her own herd. Only the pious and the productive will make the cut.
Did you think somebody else was going to be next?
Zero can be poisoned just for sitting around on YouTube. I don't do anything around the house. Brianna sure as heck doesn't do anything around the house.
Rachel fesses up that her mom had some unusual reading material.
We had a book on poisonous plants. I mean, she would talk about cyanide.
Then a critical moment across town. Crime scene investigators are busy combing through the Stouty home. These pictures show a house in disarray.
This was the home, the second residence.
Detective McAmus gave us a tour inside with permission from the new homeowner.
This was Sarah's room. There was couches, there were papers, just kind of things strewn about. She kind of had an office space set up. You could see there were some computers.
Laptops, flash drives, sculptures scattered about. And in the garage, pay dirt.
This is where our crime scene detectives located antifreeze on the workbench.
And right next to the antifreeze, the other compound in Diane's cruel chemistry. An otherwise unassuming six-pack of Coke.
Coke was described as what was given to both Sean and Sarah in terms of poisoning them.
The concoction right there.
Yes.
The
correct.
Coke and the
That is
antifreeze.
it.
In the bedroom, a curious detective makes that dynamite discovery. This is Rachel's purple diary, haphazardly thrown on a shelf. Its contents a trove of sinister secrets.
It appeared to be a journal entry written by Rachel, knowing that Mark and Sean were getting ready to be killed.
So at first you're thinking this is a mother, an evil mother, who's tried to wipe out her family. And now you discover her daughter might be involved, helping her?
Yes.
That journal entry dated June 13th, 2011, nearly a year before Mark died. It reads,
"It's sad when I realize how my father will pass on in the next 2 months. Sean, my brother, will move on shortly after. It will be tough getting used to the changes, but everything will work out."
That's pretty chilling.
Very.
She's writing in a journal about killing her father and her brother.
It was extremely alarming. I'm gonna have you wait here for just a second.
Back at the station, Detective McAmis leaves the room and gets briefed on that explosive diary. He returns in a different mood.
Rachel, do you recognize this?
Yeah, I remember this.
This is Missouri, and now it's time to show me.
You wrote this then, what you're telling me? Okay.
I'd had a lot of really bad dreams about them dying. I talked to Mom about it, and she mentioned she was thinking of hurting them.
Rachel's bad dream just beginning. McAmis isn't buying her story or her tears.
What did you tell your mother?
That it would be quick, that it'd be easy.
Rachel reveals the awful truth. Mother's favorite was
Wow.
also Mother's little helper.
It would be quick and it would be easy.
I mean, we talked about it like Christmas.
She's sitting right here. She's starting to tell you the whole thing, and she basically owns up to it.
To hear the daughter and the admissions that she's making and that this was a plan, and I was totally shocked, totally stunned by everything that had taken place. It was just a completely surreal feeling.
The mother-daughter duo carefully plan and research all options. Suffocation, pills, Googling how to kill your husband. The devout Christians even explored witchcraft.
Like on my computer specifically, there's a lot of Wicca sites.
Before settling on antifreeze.
Because in general, you could put it in something and you couldn't taste it.
What else did she tell you?
She wanted a specific tasteless one.
Rachel, whose idea was this?
Mom brought it up, I mean, and we discussed.
Mom recruiting daughter to help her systematically kill her husband, her son, and then poison her daughter? It's almost unheard of.
It was supposed to be just Dad, but pretty soon Diane turned her attention to Sean, the son she thought was irritating. Listen to how little it took to end up on her hit list.
Sean, we argued on a lot because I still think we could have put him in like a assisted living, but she wanted him out.
What did you say when she talked about killing Sarah?
Sarah was equally unneeded. We could have found someplace else for her. She was very adamant on that Sarah was just a burden that Sarah needed to be taken care of.
Rachel, too, now under arrest, charged with murdering her father and brother. Her sister Sarah still fighting for her life.
When Rachel was arrested, there was a big clue found in her purse.
That's right. Her purse was searched, incident to arrest, and there was a note.
With her sister Sarah hospitalized, the star student Rachel had authored a poem worthy of Edgar Allan Poe.
Once upon a time, there were 6. Now, there are 3. Only the quiet ones will be left. My mom, my little sister, and me.
Wow. That's pretty cold stuff.
This is a very cold and depraved murder.
The Springfield poisoning case. 2 people dead, 2 in jail, 1 in the hospital.
The family was poisoned with antifreeze.
The next day, the tale hits the news like a twister. While down at the county courthouse, a rare sight. A mother and daughter, both arraigned for murder.
No way, this cannot be true. Not right here in our little neighborhood.
But no one is more surprised than Mark's old bandmate, Charles Alexander.
I was floored. And when I heard that he was poisoned, then I just cried. I collapsed. I said, I can't believe this woman did this.
Looking back, he begins recalling little quirks about his friend's wife.
I was never really allowed in the house for some strange reason. It was always at the garage. And it was so strange. I seen antifreeze bottles sitting in the garage, and I'm thinking, who has antifreeze in the summertime?
Strangest of all, Diane's blasé manner after Mark died.
I went to her house and asked her what happened. And she proceeded to tell me like she was giving me a recipe to a cake. No emotions, no nothing.
Just matter of fact.
It was just like, oh, he died and you add 2 eggs.
Also shocked, Diane's fellow church members at Redeemer Lutheran. Well, maybe except for one. Remember that anonymous 911 caller who first tipped off police?
Do you ever find out who blew the whistle on her?
We were able to determine that the anonymous caller was actually the pastor at Diane's church.
The pastor turned her in.
Yes.
Pastor Jeff Sippy.
If you are not praying for your children, if you are not deeply invested in them, I'm going to tell you this, no one else is either.
The leader of the flock compelled by his own conscience to root out the wolf among them. He declined our requests for an interview.
So he knew that something was evil here.
I think he definitely had his suspicions. Diane's demeanor after the deaths, he told me he couldn't take those feelings, that he had to call it in.
All right. Now, if that ain't twisted, I don't know what is. So that's going to close out the show for today. We'll hang out in the chat for maybe a minute or two. Just wanted to try to tie all these different approaches with Delphi. I want everything to be on the table. You know, we're not here to comfort anybody that potentially caused this harm and basically took away all my free time for the last 4 years. So everything's on the table. I mean, think about it. Mother and daughter together tried to wipe out the rest of their family. Who in their right mind would ever suspect that as even being possible? But when you have something go unsolved and unexplained for so long, you have to consider everything, or you are wasting your time. So those crocodile tears. Same goes for teen killers, you know. They can act just as remorseful. They can cry at a funeral and have blood on their hands. Yep, exactly. Don't worry, Big Daddy. This one was just for everybody on the other side of the planet. You know, they're always asking, hey, can you do something just a little bit earlier? You know, and I looked at the statistics on the YouTube studio, and I do have a lot of viewers from Europe, you know, UK, and that part of the world. Yes, John Smith. When I say crocodile tears, that is the first person who pops into my mind. Now imagine protecting that animal, somebody who could lie. If they wouldn't have captured him on that the neighbor's webcam or a security camera, people would still be advocating for him as we speak. You know how disgusting that would make me feel? So like I said, do not go accusing people. Now, registered sex offenders and people in prison for life for murders, they were convicted after the Delphi cases. You know, all these types of people, I don't give a shit what you do. You can accuse them all you want. They've asked for it. They've already proven that they could cross that line. So if they just happen to be passing through Delphi and they're a convicted killer, yeah, accuse them. I don't care. But when it comes to family, do not accuse these people. But at the same time, do not advocate for them on an unsolved murder mystery. Think of Evansdale. They didn't even release the cause of the state of the bodies, or if there was anything sexual done to the bodies. They didn't reveal that to the families. The autopsy report, that still hasn't been released to them. And that's for reasons that we're discussing today. When it's all said and done, then the support needs to come. Yeah, she was pretty bad. I mean, the fact that she recruited her own daughter, I mean, talk about grooming. And then there was all that stuff about witchcraft. Like, what the hell was that? Was that just a bunch of idiots trying to figure out how to kill people? Okay, guys. I want to thank you for tuning in to another Sleuth Intuition Live. I am editing some stuff to put together as just a video. So that is something that is upcoming. I also have another live scheduled here in about 2 days. Hopefully with a couple guests. I have some people I would like to invite over. So stay tuned and stay vigilant. And I really appreciate everybody who stopped by. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me. Thank you. Enjoy your Friday.